here we go. We are working on the practice test for geometry, topic 1, and we are on the question for number 4, and we are doing finding the weighted average of the points on the line. Yesterday we started this, so I'm just going to review really quickly that we have a number line with, I'm just going to draw right from the question, goes from -5 to +2, and then of course we have our numbers in between, so -4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, so -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Now, here is our number line. Here are the points we are trying to find the weighted average of. Okay, I want everybody up here paying attention and taking notes. Now, they do give you more information. The information that they give you on top of the number line is super confusing because they give you more numbers on top of the number line. And it's like, well, which numbers are we dealing with here, right? What did we say? Okay, yeah, woo. Okay, so here's our number line. The points represent the -5 and the +2. Try to tell me from yesterday what we went over. What do the 2 and the 8 have to do with anything? What do they represent? Yeah, you can look at your notes if you want.
It's like an unweighted average and like a weighted average or something.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay, because yesterday we talked about, before we talked about weighted average, we talked about what it would be like if it was unweighted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that again. So, we talked about unweighted average, so don't worry about the 2 and the 8 right now. Let's pretend that this question was not that hard, and it just said, what is the average of those two numbers? And what did we say we would do with those two numbers?
You would divide.
Nope, that's what you said yesterday.
Add them.
Okay, just tell me the whole thing, what you would
Add
do.
and then divide by 2.
Yes, very good. We would add them up, a -5 plus a +2, and then we would divide by 2, right? And we would get -3 over 2, which is really -1.5, or -1.5. So the average of these two numbers would be, this is 0, -1, and then -1.5 would be right about here. I'm just gonna put a little star. Okay, that's a terrible star. But that would be the unweighted average. And even though my number line is a little unbalanced, we see that the unweighted average of two numbers is going to fall smack in the middle, right? Remember we talked about yesterday, if you get a 50 on a test and a 100 on a test, what's your average of those two tests?
75.
75, because they're right in the middle. 100 plus 50 divided by 2 is 75, right in between those two numbers, smack in the middle. This is our unweighted average. But we know that in real life, real grades and real numbers, certain categories or grade or numbers can have different weights. Sometimes things weigh heavier than other things. For example, on my student, give me an example of a category in my student that weighs more heavily than a different category. Yes, tests usually weigh the heaviest, right? Something like, depends on the class, but something like 35%, right? And then maybe like participation is like 20 or 10% or something like that. Why do tests weigh so heavily? Heavily, because tests really show how much you have learned, right? So we want the final grade to be an accurate representation of what you know. And then of course participation is there to help you, it pulls it up a little bit, and maybe your homework, if you can get good homework grades, that will pull it up a little bit, but your test weighs more heavily, so it has like a stronger pull. It says, it's pulling it more towards the direction of the test. So, when we're finding the weighted average of two numbers, this has nothing to do with your test scores, but if we're trying to find the weighted average of -5 and 2, that means there's some sort of pull, there's some sort of extra pull on these numbers, okay? on the practice test, it gives you these numbers, 2 and 8. Those numbers are really important. They represent the weights, right? Now, which number, -5 or -2, is going to have a heavier weight?
Wait, what?
So this is our number line. This dot represents the number -5. This dot represents the number 2. The numbers above it are representing the weights, how much pull these numbers have. Which number, -5 or +2, based on what you see, which one is going to have the stronger pull, the heavier weight?
8.
Okay, so I see that you're saying that the 8 is heavier, right? So if the 8 is the heavier weight, it's greater, right? Picture these in pounds, okay? If this weighs if the -5 weighs 2 pounds and the 2 weighs 8 pounds, which one's heavier, the -5 or the 2? 2. So this 2 has more pull to it. It is heavier. It's almost like a scale. It's saying, well, this unweighted average, that's not going to be the same for the weighted average, because if this 2 is stronger, if it's pulling it, kind of like a tug of war, and this team is stronger and is pulling it harder, the weighted average is going to fall somewhere closer to the 2 than to the -5, right? If this is a heavier weight, which it is. Now, here's a little bit of a tricky part. How do we calculate the weighted average using these weights? Now, it's going to sound really weird, but technically, you know how the categories on My Student, the weighted categories, like tests are 35%, quizzes are 20%, 10%, whatever. All of your categories have to add up to what? 100%. To make the full weight, it has to equal 100%. What's another way of saying 100%?
10 out of 10.
Sure.
100 out of 100.
100 out of 100, yeah. 100 out of, okay, I love it. Okay, so if it has to equal 100%, that equals 100 out of 100, that's very good. What does 100 out of 100 equal?
100%.
100%, or what's 100 divided by 100?
50.
1.
1. Just like any number over itself will equal 1. So 100% in our test categories or our grade categories on My Student, they have to add up to 100%. They have to add up to one whole thing. It's just basically saying it has to add up to the whole thing. If these are the weights, it has to add up to the whole thing, which sounds really weird, right? How do 2 and 8 add up to the whole thing? Well, what's 2 plus 8?
10.
Good. Now I'm going to show you how to add these so they add up to the whole thing, which can be represented by the number 1, right? How do I show it so that they can be adding up to 1? Watch this. If the whole thing, if 2 plus 8 is 10, 2 tenths plus 8 tenths equals what? 2 tenths plus 8 tenths equals what? 10 tenths.
1.
Which equals 1, or the whole thing, or 100%. But do you agree that these weights, in order to equal the whole thing, can be represented by 2 tenths and 8 tenths? Because they add together to get 10. So they can be put out of 10 to get 10 out of 10, or 1. That's a weird concept, right? We understand our grade categories adding up to 100%, but when we're given these weights, 2 and 8, it's like, well, that doesn't add up to 100%. But we can get it to add up to one whole thing by saying, well, the total of 2 and 8 is 10. So if you put them both out of 10 and add them, you'll get 10 out of 10, or 1, the whole thing. So do you agree that we can say that the weight of this -5 is 2 out of 10, and the weight of this 2 is an 8 out of 10? Because 10 out of 10 would be the whole weight. Broken down, this would be 2/10, and this would be 8/10. Do you guys understand that? So what I want you to pull out of this is when you're taking your test on number 4, and it gives you these top numbers, like let's say it's 4 and 6, okay? Let's say the weights are 4 and 6. 4 and 6 add together to make 10, right? So you could do 4/10 and 6/10. Let's say the weights are 12 and 8. How would you write those weights? Let's say the weights were 12 and 8. How could you write those weights? How did we do it over here? I added them. So how would I write those weights?
20.
How would I write these weights?
12 over 20.
12 over 20, 8 over 20, 20 over 20 is the whole thing. So the 12, the weight could be represented by 12 over 20, and this weight could be represented by 8 over 20. I don't know what your numbers are gonna be on, I could probably look it up, so I'm not gonna tell you. I don't know what your numbers are gonna be up here. But what's really important is going from the numbers that they give you, which is here's 2 and 8, adding them together, and then putting each number out of that total. Do you guys understand? If you want to take notes on that, it would look something like this. You would say, add the weights together. Then, I should put the weight numbers. Add the weight numbers together. Then, put the weight numbers out of that total. That would be a big step to do here, okay? We've already figured out that this has a stronger weight, so the weighted average is not gonna be in the middle like the unweighted. It's gonna be somewhere closer to this 2, because 8 is a heavier weight than 2 because it's larger, and when we add them up, 2 plus 8, we add the weight numbers together to get 10, then we put the weight numbers out of that total. So the 2 is actually 2/10, the 8 is actually 8/10, and that's the numbers that we're gonna use to solve this, okay? So, all you have to do now, did everybody get this down? Okay, I'll wait a second. And this is the written explanation of why I took 2 plus 8 to be 10. Then I said if it's out of 10, then it would be 2/10 and 8/10. Because together they would equal 10/10. Now I'll show you what we'll do mathematically to actually find the weighted average. We might need our calculator on this one. So let's go back to our number line and once again determine this -5 and this +2. These are the numbers that we're dealing with. These are the actual numbers on the number line. So -5 The weight of -5 is what? What's the weight for -5? 2/10. So what you're gonna do is multiply -5 times 2/10. So the next step, after this step, I'm gonna put step 1, add the weights together, then add the weight numbers together, then put the weight numbers out of that total. Okay, step 2 would be multiply the numbers times its weight. Or I should say multiply each number times its weight. That would be better English. Multiply each number times its weight. So then we've got 2 times its weight, 8/10. Now here's the full equation. You're gonna add them together. You're gonna multiply the -5 times its weight, and you're gonna multiply the 2 times its weight, and then you're going to combine them. And that's gonna give you your weighted average. So it is very different than an unweighted average, right? Very, very different. So step 1, add your weights together, 2 plus 8, you get 10, so put those numbers out of 10, put those weight numbers out of 10. Then you're gonna take your numbers from the number line and multiply it times its weight, and then step 3 is add them together. Or add those products together. Now, the way that I like to rewrite this is because this is out of 10, this will be super easy to do on a calculator. You could simply just write 2/10 as 0.2, right? And multiply that times -5. And then 8/10, how could we write that as a decimal? How do we write Grayson, how do we write 8/10 as a decimal? Sit up, please.
8.10.
No, 8/10 as a decimal.
Like 0.5. I forgot.
What did you
What,
say?
8?
0.008.
No, 0.008. 8/10. 8/10 is 8 in the 10ths place. So it'd be 0.8. This is your 10ths place. So 8/10 would be,
I said hundreds.
oh, okay. All right, so we have 0.8 here times 2. We have to multiply -5 times 0.2. Anybody want to do that on a calculator? -5 times 0.2. Yeah, there you go.
0.5.
Huh?
0.5.
No.
I got -7.
Hmm?
I got -1.
-1 is correct. -1 plus, what's 2 times 0.8? 1.6. Last step, add them together. A -1 plus 1.6 is 0.6, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the beginning we said our weighted average has to be closer to the 2, right? Because it's more heavily weighted. It's being pulled stronger on this side. Here's our unweighted average, which is smack in the middle. Does 0.6, which is like, I don't know, if you put this on the number line, I can't do it exactly, but it's gonna be, I know where 0.5 would be, right? It would be halfway between the 0 and the 1. So 0.6 might be like just a little bit over here. So this would be our weighted average. right? Does it make logical sense? Does it make sense for the weighted average to be all the way over here? Considering that -5 had a weight of 2 out of 10. 2 had a weight of 8 out of 10. Which weight was stronger?
8. I went 2.
The 2 with the 8 out of 10 weight. So does it make sense that the weighted average is going to be closer to this? Because instead of being smack in the middle, the 2 is saying, I'm bigger and stronger, so you have to come closer to me. So does that make sense that the weighted average would be no longer halfway in between, but closer to the 2? Now, the 2 is not strong enough. It's not 10 out of 10. If it were 10 out of 10, it would just be 2. It would be a point on 2. But this still has a little bit of pull. It's just a wimpy old 2 out of 10. It's pulling it a little bit. And this one's going, no, I'm much stronger. So with my strength together, it's going to be 0.6 or 0.6. And that would be your weighted average. Does that make sense? Do you guys think you'll be able to get this question right on your test? Still, really?
No.
Well, guess what? It's on video, so you can watch it tonight and tomorrow night and practice it over and over and over.